If you look right here, you can see we got us a 1970, I believe this is a 70 model Super Beetle, 71. Now, this is a Super Beetle. You can see how high the front end sits up on it and how it rolls around in the front. If you see a bug that has the front end where it's rolled around and it's got this little grill area, that is a sign that it's a Super Beetle. But this is an early model Super Beetle because it's got the flat windshield. It doesn't have the round curved one. Now we're in the process of restoring this Super Beetle, and we are now at the point of all the bodywork's done. We've stripped the car down, everything that needs to be stripped to go ahead and refinish it. We've been through a lot of stuff on this car, but what we're doing today, we are going to change the motor out. We are going to go ahead and exchange the motor out because the motor in this bug is shot.
Welcome to D.I.Y. Automotive School with my friend Pete and Minnie, the body shop girl. It's everything you need to know about cars and more.
When I say the motor's shot, I'm talking that this motor is completely worn out. It doesn't have no compression in it. The end play on it is ridiculous. The whole thing just moves back and forth. And it's just an old, beat up, worn out engine. So what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and remove this engine, and then we're going to reinstall a new engine into the bug, and I'm going to show you how to do that from start to finish. So the first thing that I'm going to do, now this isn't necessary if you're doing this at home, but for video purposes and teaching purposes, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and remove the deck lid so we can get a better picture on it and you can see exactly what's happening a lot easier and a lot simpler, which is going to make my job easier to show you how to do it right. Now that we got everything out of the way, now we can actually see what's going on now that the deck lid is removed. And what we got to do is we got to start dismantling our wire harness. We're going to disconnect our wire harness. We're going to take our fuel line, remove the fuel line. We're going to go ahead and take some of the cooling tin off. And then we'll be ready to go ahead and pull the motor out, drop it down, and reinstall the other engine. Now, before doing any type of mechanic work on your engine whatsoever, the first thing you really need to do is go ahead and disconnect the positive or the ground cable from your battery. This is going to ensure that we don't have any electrical shorts or start electrical fires or burn any of our electrical system up in removing our alternator wires and any other electrical wires that might be in the way of removing our engine. So to disconnect the battery, what you want to do is come over here on the passenger side of the vehicle, and if you lift the back seat up just like this, you're going to see that the battery is located right under the passenger side of your car. And all you got to do is take a 1/2-inch wrench and go ahead, loosen your bolts up. Now you can use a 13 millimeter. Remember that a Volkswagen has metric bolts on it. I say 1/2 inch, but we're going to use the 13, and then just disconnect one of the posts off of your battery, just like so. Now, the first tool that you're really actually going to need is a cup such as this, or a little box or something, or a dish, maybe a plastic container, or anything that you can find to keep all of your nuts and bolts and all of your hardware and stuff and parts that you take off of your engine. You want to keep them in a nice place so they're all together and you don't lose anything, because if you lose the mounting bolts on this engine, you're pretty much screwed, because these aren't a common car anymore and they're hard to find. So always keep everything in a nice tight place and all together, so when it goes back together, you get the idea. So what we'll start with removing our heater box junctions here. And if you are planning on taking your engine out like I am, you'll see that it will have hose clamps on it. Alright, so loosen your hose clamps. Do not throw that away. If it looks like it's in good shape, just like this one, it's reusable. You don't have to buy any new. Alright, the next thing we want to remove is this piece of cooling tin right in the front here, which goes under our crank pulley. You want to go ahead and locate the screws if there's any at all on it. And I see that this one has exactly 3 holding it on, 4, and they're misplaced screws. They're not even the correct screws, but that's what you're dealing with when you're dealing with a car this old, that other people have messed with it. So let me take this piece out, then we'll proceed. And then once you've removed all of the screws that are holding down that piece of cooling tin, you will then be able to remove it out of the vehicle. This is very important to remove this because you won't be able to pull your engine out if this is still installed into the vehicle. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and disconnect our fuel line from the vehicle. Now you don't need to disconnect the fuel line that goes from the fuel pump to the carburetor. The only one you have to disconnect is the fuel line to the fuel tank. Now, I'm going to go up under the car, and I'm not going to bring the camera with me, but what I am going to show you is once you remove your fuel line, you'll want to take a pair of vice grip, needle nose vice grip pliers, because you'll want to clamp that fuel line just like that to make sure that the fuel does not leak out of your fuel line as you're working on it. So I'm going to go underneath, I'm going to pull my fuel line through the back of the engine, and then I will clamp that and leave it hanging until I need it to reinstall on the new engine. And you can see right there that it is leaking as we talk. You can see that. So that's very important to make sure that you clamp that fuel line off when you disconnect it. You always got to remember that the fuel tank sits higher than the engine. The fuel tank's up in the front, and it's sitting like this while the engine's sitting down here, so everything runs downhill. So it's very important to make sure that you do that, especially if you're a smoker, a cigarette smoker. You don't want to smoke around that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start disconnecting all our wires from the vehicle. Now, you have very, very few wires here that you need to disconnect. You need to disconnect the 3 alternator or generator wires. And what we're looking at here, we're looking at the red and the green, and then the ground wire in the back here. Those need to be disconnected. So now we have our generator / alternator wires disconnected. Another thing we got to do is on our cooling tin, you're going to see where this wire harness that comes from the back. Now this is going to go to our carburetor and our coil. So we want to follow this wire harness right here, come around to our coil and disconnect it right there. And one more thing, if you're not familiar with your wire harness, take a piece of tape and mark on the tape where it goes. You might put on this coil plus. Do you understand what I'm saying? So this would be a plus. You might put generator or alternator on this one. Alright? That's very important to mark those. And then we're just going to go down the line, disconnect our wires as we go. This is our oil pressure light switch there. That's very important. This is our oil pressure switch right here. This is a very, very important item on our engine, because that's going to tell us if we run low on oil on our gauge cluster. We don't want to do that because this is an air-cooled engine, and the only thing that cools it down is the oil. Once your wire harness is disconnected, the last and final thing that we're going to connect on this is our fuel cable. This is our throttle cable down in this area here. Now sometimes to get to that easily, you might have to remove your distributor cap, so we'll go ahead and get that out of the way. We don't need to take the wires off, but remove that, and then you can get to the screw on the side or the nut or whatever you're dealing with, the bolt, and loosen that clamp. Alright, this is not even a screw, it's a bolt. We're going to put our finger right here on the cable, down on the bottom to hold it, And then what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and remove that bolt, just like so. And this is another one of those items you do not want to lose this. I'm going to show you what it is. You don't want to lose that cable clamp right there. That's very important. Make sure you don't lose that, because that's the only way you're going to be hooking up the gas cable back onto the engine. Alright, once you've disconnected everything, it is now time to go ahead and jack the car up in the air, and make sure that you have 2 sturdy jack stands to rest your car on, because we are now ready to start removing the engine from the vehicle.
Thanks for watching D.I.Y. Automotive School. Classes don't stop till you know everything.